Wow, I'm impressed with myself, except the bottom of my pants are wet from standing outside, so I'm not too impressed. Thank you, Karen. That was so nice. I'm going to talk a little bit today instead of just about my books. You can see I'm very high tech. I write all my notes on yellow paper. If I can get it to come open. I'm going to talk a little bit today about passion. I had the most fun conversation at my table a minute ago. Patrice, stand up. Now this is a very active talk, so all of you kind of got to get ready to be interactive here. Patrice, wave at everybody. Patrice is retired. I know she looks 12, but she is retired, and she does fitness, thus the arms, okay? And she's a friend of Karen, wherever Karen is. And Patrice was telling me, you can sit down now, but Patrice was telling me that she is now wanting to do just her passion. And I said, you saw my notes. Now Devin, whom you've all met, there he is over there. Devin, wave at everybody. Devin's got us on video. Devin was telling me about 30 minutes ago, and he didn't know what I was going to talk about, how he does his passion, which is playing the, piano, guitar, and drums. Can you imagine? And so other than doing public relations and videoing, he does his passion. So I wanted to ask you, who in here has a passion? Unless it's not your work, it's just your passion. If you don't raise your hand, I'm going to ask you. Who is that way back there? Tell us your passion. Gardening. Wonderful. You've got a passion, I can tell. Hold on.
Cooking.
Go. Oh, what's your address? All right, Crystal.
I make greeting cards.
Greeting cards. I see a lady in orange. What's your passion back there? Hospitality. Okay, hospitality. I want your address too. This table right here. Let's see. I think you have a passion.
I'm an audience. I've been working for 30 years teaching school, and I'm an audience of all the things I've wanted to be.
You're an audience. How does that work?
I just go to all these wonderful things, and I don't have to worry about homework.
She's a professional. Is that volunteer or just a bystander looking at the fun?
I just love to be an audience. I love to be an audience.
Okay, I've never heard that one. I've never heard that, but that's great. So if you're doing something, get right in front of her so she can be your audience. The reason I wanted to talk about passion is I'm going to lead into my books in just a minute. Passion is vital. You know, I looked up Webster's definition of passion, and a lot of us think about passion as being like passionate, right? Like, you know, sexy and hot, like my second book, wherever it is, Sex and the Siren. But actually, passion is really just being strong and barely controllable emotion. It's having a strong and barely controllable emotion. So if you've wanted your whole life to cook, you probably liked that when you were a kid, didn't you? Yeah, and if you garden, you probably loved being outside as a kid. So it's really something in you that you want to do that you probably won't get paid for. Now you might. You know, you might take your passion and take it into being a career. A lot of people do. But at our age, and I know we're all ages in here, but at my age, Social Security age, it's important to have a passion, and it's important to pursue that passion because it does renew life. It's really the oil for the engine, if you will, of our life. So I'm going to talk about my passion, which was always reading and writing. I grew up on a little farm in a little town, actually 13 miles out of a little town called Henrietta, Texas. Do any of you know where Henrietta, Texas is? It's up by Wichita Falls. Yeah, and in Dallas, they call that West Texas. Now, we called it North Texas because we thought Lubbock was west. But in Dallas, anything west of Fort Worth is west, okay? So I'm always a little bit in a stupor and confused. I'm dazed and confused like the movie back in the 90s or 80s because I don't know where I came from, but I came from the Northwest, up by Red River. And I grew up 13 miles out of Henrietta on a farm ranch, and I was the only daughter. I have an older sister, as you'll read if you read my memoir, but she was 20 years older than me, so I was like an only child. And so my passion was reading, which is something I could do. Back in those days, TV was only 3 channels, 3, 6, and 7. So, you know, it is usually Art Linkletter or somebody I didn't care anything about. So I read, and I read, and I read, and my mother said that my life was really because I read so many magazines. And so my passion was always reading and writing, and I loved poetry. And thus, when I retired, which is when I remarried 7 years ago, I started doing my passion, and that was writing. But I'm going to tell you now how I got into writing, and I'm going to borrow Crystal's book because I'm about out of books. In fact, I think we're out of Sex and the Siren. Does anybody have a Sex and the Siren you haven't bought? I have people looking for them. Is there one at your table? Come on, girls. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3. We got 3 that have not been purchased yet. Cinderella was my first book. And so what happened with Cinderella is I got a divorce right after I was mayor in Colleyville. And as people say, did the divorce did being mayor lead to the divorce? Actually, the internet led to the divorce. My ex-husband renewed his relationship with his college sweetheart on the internet, and she lived in France, so it was a heck of a trip. And they would meet in Chicago, which is where he went for business all the time. So the internet led to my divorce, and you will read about how I found out about that in Cinderella Has Cellulite. Cinderella Has Cellulite's about 20 chapters of just little independent chapters, and it's called The Musings of a Last Wife. And the reason I call it an Other Musings of a Last Wife is it truly is musings, just little short chapters about what happened to me and to my friends. It's not all me in this book. I don't mean to sound like our president. It's all about me. Anyway, it's my friends and me giving some humorous advice and humorous stories about dating and possibly remarrying or not. I married a man that's wife had died. She had passed, and we dated for 3 years, and it was the most traumatic thing. How many of you have dated or gone out with a man after, say, 40 years old? Anybody? Yep, there you are. You know the trauma. It is so traumatic. And so when we married, it was traumatic all the way up through the wedding, and I talk about the wedding in here. In fact, this really happened to me at the wedding. My husband, when his wife passed, I call them the casserole ladies because women brought casseroles all the time to him. He was a very eligible bachelor, and he and I met in the lobby of a high-rise building in Dallas, but he also dated many other women during that time. And at the wedding, one of the casserole women was at our wedding, and she came up to me, and we were getting ready to walk out and, say Mr. and Mrs. Weitzman. And so she walks up to both of us, and we're standing right here, and she goes, "What are you smiling about?" It was my wedding, right? And I said, "Oh, you should try it sometime." So anyway, that's in the book too. There's a lot of humor. It's a humor book. And it's written about, as I said, about dating and relationships and what happens, and we have to laugh at ourselves, don't we, girls? Don't we have? So that's what this book is about. This book went out in July of 2015. I'm an accidental author. I don't want to take too long here. I'm an accidental author because I never dreamed it would be a book. I never wrote it to be a book. I wrote it because I love to write, back to my passion, and so I just started writing things down. I just would write and write and write. And finally, after I got about, I would say 8 little chapters, maybe 10, it was so funny to me because I would laugh at myself and how funny, I would literally laugh when I was writing it. So I started reading it to my girlfriends, and they would laugh. And so we'd have a glass of wine and we'd read some more, and then we would laugh. And so they said, "Oh, it's got to be a book, it's got to be a book, it's got to be a book." And I knew nothing about writing a book. How many of you have written a book? Anybody? One? Anybody else? Okay. We all have a book in us. Okay? It's not that hard. So, and I'll tell you the secret in a minute. But anyway, so people kept saying, "You got to write a book, you got to write a book." And so I had a party at my house for a charity. And when I did, this is all by accident. I think it's serendipitous that it happened. I'm standing this close to a woman. I'm introducing myself, and I said, what do you do? And she said, I'm a book editor. And I was like, a book editor? I need a book editor. And so I told her, I said, I've got something that I think might be a good book. It's humorous about dating. And she said, no, I write religious biographies. I was like, oh, that's okay. But I talked her into doing my book because she's the only book editor I know. And she's from Tyler, and she's done all my books now, and she's a dear friend. And she is Marianne is probably about 35 years old. And I'm 67, so there was a little age difference between us. But we figured it out, and I don't think she'll ever marry now that she's written all these books. But anyway, so by then I had it edited, right? So I've got the manuscript, it's edited. I needed somebody to do the layout and the cover of the book. Well, Marianne doesn't do covers, my editor. So we're struggling. We're like, oh no, now what are we going to do? Because she couldn't do a religious biography for a cover for Cinderella Has Cellulite. It didn't work. And so my husband and I went to the Kentucky Derby, and I'm sitting across from a woman in a gorgeous, by the way, I wore this hat. I'm sitting across from a woman, about 30 years old again, just gorgeous in a black and white hat, much like yours. And at the end of the Derby, when we'd lost our money, we're getting up and ready to go, and I said, what do you do? And she goes, I do covers for books. I was like, oh my God, I need to talk to you, don't leave. And so I talked her into doing the cover. And this is the original cover. This is the original printing. The book's in its third printing right now. And you can see it's a ring. It's a big fat ring. And I talk about the ring in the book and how do you get, if you get a bigger ring than the ex-wife, then, all of her friends hate you and want to know how he's going to pay his child support. If you get a smaller ring than his ex-wife, then your friends feel sorry for you and think he doesn't love you. So there's a chapter in there on what size ring you're supposed to get when you get remarried. It depends on how many marriages too. So also wedding showers. There's all that advice in there in a humorous way. Okay, so the book started selling. I wanted to sell 1,300 books. That was my goal. How many books do you think the average author sells in a year? Anybody? Anybody want to guess? How about in the lifetime of their book? Anybody hazard a guess? 40,000, that's a dream. 300. 300. How many books do you think there are published each year in the United States? The United States alone. Anybody hazard a guess? 1,000,002. 1,000,002. How many books do you think that there are on Amazon, which is the largest bookseller in the world? How many books? How many titles? 8 million. 8 million. So if you write a book to make money, unless you're Shakespeare, I would suggest not doing it. There's not much money in a book. I make about $5 a book. And so Amazon takes $5 and the publisher takes $5 out of this $15. So you got to sell a lot of books on an ongoing basis. So I never wrote the book to make money. In fact, I just wanted to sell 1,300 because that was my cost. If I could sell 1,300 books individually at $15 a piece, that's why authors like to sell them on their own, because they get the whole amount rather than going through Amazon, which takes a third of all the money. And that's why Jeff Bezos now is the richest man in the world other than Putin. So Jeff Bezos and Putin are the richest two men in the world, they claim. But that's because he has taken so much money from authors and now from all of us because we write into Amazon. But without Amazon, authors couldn't make it. We couldn't sell the book. Although my books are sold in most bookstores. But anyway, so the book started selling, and I sold about 1,000 in Highland Park and University Park, a lot of divorcees there. And so that was very popular in that area. And so anyway, the book now is sold in the tens of thousands. It's sold all over the country. It's sold all over the world. I was in Japan last year and saw it on the bookstore, one of the biggest 4-story bookstore in Tokyo, and it was all written in Japanese except for Cinderella Has Cellulite and my name. And so that was fun to see that. It actually hit the bookstores in the airports, which was a major thing because most airports only, if you'll notice, publish self-help books and business books, and they don't ever put anything fun. It's hard to find those. And so that was a big deal for me to go in the airports. And it became number 17 the second month. I have to remember now back. Second month it was out. 17 out of 8 million books it was selling. And so, thank you, it became a bestseller and it was very exciting. It started being picked up. People love the title of the book, Cinderella Has Cellulite. The reason for the cellulite is we all have baggage, right, that we bring to our new relationships. So I call that baggage cellulite because it's something you can't get rid of. You got to take your baggage with you. And there's a chapter in the book that talks about your baggage and how to deal with yours and his baggage, because we're all going to have that. And Cinderella, because we all want to be Cinderella. Right? I mean, we grow up wanting to be Cinderella, but unfortunately, we have something we can't get rid of, and that's our baggage. That's life, is our baggage. And so people love the title. The way we got the title, and I'm asked this all the time, how do we get the title? We got the title because I originally thought the title should be Shut Up and Wear Beige. You're the second wife, don't say anything, just sit there, wear beige, and shut up. And so I talked to some people and they said, you need to have the book copyrighted. And I said, oh, it'll never sell, but I'll copyright it. So I went to copyright attorney and told him what I wanted to do. And he said, I'll run the title search. And he ran this title search, Shut Up and Wear Beige, and sure enough, some women in Anchorage, Alaska have a club of second and third wives called Shut Up and Wear Beige. And so he said, you can go ahead and name it. It's not a big club. There's only about, looks like 10 or 15 women. And I said, no, just in case it sells, I better name it something else. The book was going ready to print. I mean, it was getting ready. The cover was imminent. We needed to do the cover. And so I'm talking to my 35-year-old publisher in Tyler, and I said, oh, Marianne, I don't know what we're going to call it. I said, it's kind of like you want to be Cinderella, but you got cellulite. And she goes, that's the title. And that's how the title started. So the title caught on, it went viral, it's sold in Australia and Germany, and if you look online, if you go under DonnaArpWeitzman.com, or you look under Donna Arp Weitzman books, or you look under Cinderella Has Cellulite, you will see all the different books written in different languages. So it's kind of fun to read it in German or whatever, I can't read it, but, okay. So what happened in the title caught on, I got interest from Hollywood, believe it or not. And I played with Hollywood for about a year, which is the most frustrating thing you could ever do. I really, really, really get frustrated when I go to Hollywood. I do have an agent who's drop dead good looking, by the way. Michael Pio is his name, and he's with Innovative Artists, which is one of the big six. And so their job is to market your manuscript. And he did, and he marketed it to some writers who write for Robert Redford for Sundance. And the TV show is now written into 20 segments, and it was written by 2 writers who write for Robert Redford. No, I have not gotten to meet Robert Redford. I have not. But anyway, but along the way, because TV shows don't mirror the chapters, it was also written for a movie out of a young man in Dallas who is a writer, a big film writer. And the movie's kind of not much like the book at all, but the TV script really is. I love the TV script, and everybody says it's written better for TV. However, along the way, they ran out of material, and they said, we need more material. Thus, who's got a Sex and the Siren? Where are they? There they are. Hold it up. The Sex and the Siren book came out of following on the heels of Cinderella Has Cellulite. And it's the tales of a later dater. And so when I wrote this book, I was on a cruise ship, and I was thinking, what in the world am I going to do? And I saw an older lady hitting on a younger man in the library of an Oceania cruise. And I watched them, and it was so cute. The first chapter came out of cougars and kittens. So that's how that book came about. It's written into the script. I love Tales of a Later Dater, but I got to tell you, every book I write, I love it best. And then when I close the chapter, I have never reread Cinderella Has Cellulite. I've done speeches all over the country. I'm going to Rockport next month, Texas, to speak to their library association. But I have to remember what I wrote in Cinderella because it's been 3 years ago. Cinderella continues to sell. It's amazing. And so when I came out with Sex and the Siren, I thought, I'm going to do something brand new. I'm not going to promote it at all. Not at all. I'm just going to see what it does without any promotion. Cinderella got promoted. Tell me when I'm getting close. Cinderella got promoted, and here's how it really got out there. How it really got out there is I took this book to the New York Book Show, which is the largest book show in the world, in Frankfurt, Germany. And I got a little table for $600, and it was me and the book. And people love the hot pink, and I always wear hot pink to kind of promote it. And people would come by the book show, and they would say, what a funny title. And finally, PR firms started coming by, because I had wanted to do PR on the book, and nobody would take me. They're like, you gotta be kidding, you're a first-time author. Not hardly. But anyway, people would come by the table, and a lady came by the table. Her name was Sandy Smith. And Sandy Smith owns the Smith Publishing Company in New Jersey, and I really liked her, and she really liked the book. And I was looking for a PR firm. There are PR firms that just market books, and that's all they do. And that's what I wanted. But nobody would take me, because unless you're third-time author, fourth-time author, it gets easier like anything else that's your passion, like cooking. You get more complex all the time, and gardening, you do roses and I don't, I can't, or things like that that are hard. But anyway, she said, I'll take a chance on it. Well, wait a minute now, and I said, have you ever done any books like this before? And she goes, well, we just finished up a book called 50 Shades of Grey. I said, oh, thank you. I want you to take my book. And she did. She took the book, and it literally went to the Ellen Show, to the Today Show, to Fox ate it up. And I speak regularly. I'm kind of a regular columnist now for lots of publications, AARP. I'm on Fox Radio. I don't know how many times, sometimes 7-8 times a week. So I do lots of radio across the country and TV and various things. But anyway, it came out of that book. And then Sex and the Siren came out. And so Sex and the Siren, I did not promote. I didn't hire a publicist. I didn't do one thing, and it hit number 7. Cinderella hit 14. Sex and the Siren hit number 17 on Amazon the second month it was out. Actually, that's about the third week it was out. So what it did is it followed in the footsteps of Cinderella. And so most people who've read Cinderella also will then read Sex and the Siren. Sex and the Siren's been out about a year and a half, I guess. And of course, it's handled now because it's written into the TV script. The TV script right now is written, and it's being what they called out on the street, which is very frustrating. Let me tell you how that works. In Hollywood and most production companies, when it goes to the Ellen Show, which is where it's at Ellen's production company right now, guess what? It stays with her and goes nowhere else until they decide. They may take 3 months to decide. It's a vertical sales, not horizontal. And so that's why it takes 10 years sometimes to get something made. It goes from place to place. If you shop it at all, and it's out on the street that you shopped Cinderella with Reese Witherspoon's company, and Ellen's got it, forget it. It's over. So it's very, very difficult, and that's why it takes so long. And occasionally you'll hear somebody who wrote and it came out the next year. That's very rare. It's about as rare as selling more than 300 of a new book. You got one shot and 8 million. So that's your odds. But anyway, that's how that happened. How the last book, I actually wrote a book in between, but I can't believe I did it. I'll never do it again. I wrote it actually as a historical biography for another person, and it was a big job. And so anyway, I wrote that, and that's way out there somewhere. I don't sell it. And then people kept saying, you've had an interesting upbringing. You grew up on a farm. You went to Harvard, you were a mayor, you did all this stuff. And everything I ever did was by accident, by the way. I have no grand plan. I still don't. I just kind of do whatever I think will be fun. And so people wanted me to write a memoir. And I said, I'll write a memoir, but I'm not going to write it about how great I am. I'm going to write it about how I suck at most things. And so that's what the memoir is about. It's about me being a single parent. It's about me growing up in the country. There's a lot of, little sex in it, that sort of stuff. Kind of makes it interesting. You know, it's about my college professor when I was getting my master's degree wanting to trade my grades for sex. There's a chapter about that. There's a chapter about an older man trying to rape me when I was 8. So, you know, it's not for the innocent and the faint of heart. But I was very truthful, and everything in The Wind Blew Innocent is the truth. And the reason I named it The Wind Blew Innocent is because where I grew up, the wind blew all the time. And the reason I ended up in the Metroplex was in April 13th, 1979, the wind blew my house away in Wichita Falls, the famous Wichita Falls tornado. And I moved to the Metroplex April 16th, 1979. And so the wind always blew. And so I talk about that in the book. That's woven throughout the book. Tornadoes and things that happen to you when you're growing up.